Welcome to another episode of FutureForward. I'm Teresa Spangler, CEO of Plaza Bridge Group, and I'm really thrilled today to have with me Mariah Scott. I'll share a little bit of Mariah's background, which is pretty incredible. So first, Mariah, you were the former president of Verizon Robotics, which is amazing and wonderful. I can't wait to hear more about that. Being a technology lover and a disruptor, all those things actually ring with me. But you're someone also passionate as a business builder who you love to define new markets and create products that transform the way we work. At Skyward, I guess from telehealth systems, you worked also at Intel Software. You've worked in the commercial and drone fleets at Skyward, autonomous mobile robots for warehouses, manufacturing. It's just all the things I love. So I'm so excited to have you talk more about it. But you've also led teams in the US, Europe, and Asia, from startups to global programs. You don't look that old, but it's sure saying that you've done a lot. And you're based in Portland, Oregon. A lot of times when we want to find you, you'll be out with your dogs, even in the rain. And that I think we have this also very much in common, that you believe technology for positive change and that a great team makes everything possible. And so it's just, there's so many starting points there, but I think I want to start with, if you're okay with it, right into your growth into technology and in the senior ranks. Maybe you could take us a little bit on a journey of how you ended up with this, I believe, passion for technology and how it's led you where you landed in this robotics and certainly the disruptive fields that are going on today.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to participate. I'm excited about this. To just take the journey question sort of head on, I think that we like to think about our careers and our path as sort of being up and to the right, this sort of linear progression. I started here and I ended here. And at least for me, and I suspect for many folks, it's more like a tree than a financial chart. It has a lot of branches.
And the limbs occasionally break.
Sometimes those limbs break. We hope that the tree grows big and strong. And I am very fortunate that it generally grows up and grows strong. But when I look back on it, it looks a lot more like branches than it does like a financial chart.
Yeah.
I'm not technical. So my undergraduate degree is actually in Japanese. And I went to a liberal arts school. I went to Carleton College in Minneapolis. I just really was drawn to technology because of that transformative potential. And it might be a little old school now to think about technology for good, but that's why I joined Intel.
I'm there too.
Yeah, and I really believe that. And it takes people to make that happen. It takes a great team of all different kinds of voices to make that happen. And I think it takes curiosity. And maybe that's where, my background in always being curious about what's the next thing and how can it help people and what could we do differently and how could we make that better, continuing to ask those questions has sort of led me on my journey. I started actually at Intel, straight out of my MBA program at Kellogg. And that was, Intel at that time was super innovative. We were trying all kinds of new things. I got to start and lead some new businesses. I had this idea that online transactions were going to be a thing and identity was going to be really important. So I actually pitched Andy Grove and said, let's fund this new business to develop online authentication. And he said yes. And we did that. And then I think it was around 2001, the first kind of .com implosion, and Intel went back to the core business. And so I sold that business off to VeriSign. Great early entrepreneurial experience that taught me about innovation in a large company, diversification, trying to seize the opportunity, trying to take a risk, see what happens. That was a great experience and kind of set me on a path of always looking for new businesses, new markets, new opportunities, and where we can really improve things for folks. The most recent iteration with Verizon Robotics actually came because Verizon acquired a company that I was leading called Skyward. And Skyward was a venture-backed startup here in Portland. We were focused on software for managing commercial drone fleets and for creating automated airspace access so that you could fly your drones safely and effectively and do things like inspections and surveying and mapping and disaster response. And Verizon acquired that company in 2017, and I was the president, and I became the president on the acquisition. And then we started building it out within Verizon, and it was an incredible opportunity to innovate at Verizon scale. You know, you sort of went from being a startup of 20 some odd people to now we have the resources of a Fortune 12 company, and we're really going to connect all the drones to the network, and we're going to build out all these commercial fleets. And it was a phenomenal opportunity. And then we expanded in 21 to add ground robotics. So we were looking at managing aerial fleets of robots in drones and connecting all those drones to the network. And then we said, hey, we have the same kind of an opportunity in warehouses and manufacturing, where we're seeing a rise of autonomous mobile robots and a need for the same kind of management and operational management and networking that can really help those robots be more effective for people. So kind of a, coming from the same starting point of how can this technology make our lives better? How can it make it easier and safer for humans to do the work that we're doing? Robots are a great answer to that. And just kind of following that path.
But the path it just sounds like you started with a lot of confidence, because to present to Andy Grove, it takes a certain amount of, chutzpah to be able to do that. Tell me where your confidence came from. And then I want to kind of come back and understand how, I love the fact that, and nor did I didn't study technology in school, but it is where I landed and I loved it. And I think maybe similar, but I kind of want to go on that journey a little bit more with you. But talk about the confidence and where that came from. And, just give us a little essence of what it takes to convince an Andy Grove size individual or responsibility to make that decision.
Well, I think you'll hear this from a lot. I think you probably hear this from a lot of entrepreneurs, whether you're inside a large company innovating or you're venture backed and you're trying to start something. It takes a certain kind of wild-eyed optimism and also not knowing everything that you don't know. Like,
right.
If I actually had a sense of how hard it was, I probably wouldn't have done it. I think a certain quality of being in tech and being in emerging markets is that kind of optimism of just thinking, I'm going to try it. And I'm sure there are things that I don't know. I'll figure them out along the way, or I'll find other people to help me and come along on that journey. And together we'll find the answers. And a certain amount of not knowing actually what's ahead of you, because if you really did, you'd second guess yourself.
You may not do it.
I think one of the things I have really tried to live by, and sometimes more successfully than others, is the idea that you can't win if you don't enter.
Yeah.
So
I love
may
that.
not have the answers.
Yeah.
I may be thinking about the risks or thinking about the downsides or thinking about the what if I fail or what if somebody says no, but your chances of winning are exponentially greater if you actually try than if you don't.
So again, where do you think the confidence came from, or did you gain it through school? Did you gain it as a young child somewhere? Where did it stem from, do you think?
Well, that's a really good question.
Did you ever have imposter syndrome?
Oh, all the time, 100%, like almost every day.
Yeah.
I still have imposter syndrome. I actually think if you don't have some level of imposter syndrome, you're not paying attention. Like,
That's a good point. Yes.
there's a certain amount of situational awareness and just being very mindful of the fact that no one succeeds or fails alone.
Right.
And having success, some of that is my hard work. Absolutely. Some of that is confidence and initiative. And a lot of that is other people who are helping along the way, and just the sheer luck of where you happen to find yourself. The sheer luck that I happened to find myself in a situation where I had the opportunity to make that pitch. There's a, so I think that amount of just kind of self-reflection, and thinking, okay, I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to put myself out there. And maybe, let's see, I grew up in a small town.
Yeah.
And a small town in Indiana. And maybe some of the confidence is just from having to just pushing through that.
Yeah.
And going on to college and everything. When we took our high school aptitude tests, and this is one of my favorite stories, because I got called into the counselor's office that I had failed the aptitude test. And it was because I had shown no aptitude for being a receptionist or a cashier.
Oh, how funny.
And those were the two jobs that were appropriate for a girl at that time. And those are fine jobs.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but they're not jobs that I mean, the test was right. I have no aptitude for those jobs. And that conversation really stuck with me, because I thought, okay, I'm going to have to create a different version, a different story, because this story is not going to fit me. I'm going to have to go find another story that I can build and that will fit me. And maybe that's kind of a germ, that impetus of saying, okay, I have to go out here and make this story happen.
So you had an intrinsic, just, fight in you. Like, I mean, it really starts to come out. I can see it already. But really, how important has that been all through your career? Because I'm sure you faced other barriers.
Yes, I think you have to believe that you can try, and you can try again, and keep trying. That aspect of resilience is important. And not that you don't have, I have self-doubt and imposter syndrome and all the things that come along with that. That's totally normal. But you have to just keep picking it up and going after it. And I think I absolutely have that. But I'm also a really curious person. So when I'm trying to approach a situation, if I'm trying to think about career or think about work, or I think about, does this work matter? Mm-hmm. If the work matters, then that creates a lot of intrinsic motivation to go after, how do I make it happen? Is it going to help my community? Is it going to help the planet? Is it going to help the people around me? Can I feel good about getting up in the morning and putting all this effort in? And I think that can itself create a lot of motivation to just keep going when it's, it gets hard, or people say no, or, whatever. And I also really think a lot about the team. So who are the people that I'm going to be working with, and can I learn from those people, and can I reach out to them? Because if you have a team around you, it's so much easier. And, the hard things get easier. All the innovation gets a lot more possible, and those barriers, you can work around them. Maybe I can't break them down, but I know someone else who can help with that. And
in that, did you actually create a mentor group, or reach out to ask for mentorship along your way, or when you were younger?
I wish I could say that I had been more intentional in that, but I actually was not. I have been very fortunate to have people throughout my career who were mentors to me. And who I intentionally cultivated and tried to keep in touch with. But not, I love the concept of people who have a personal board of directors, and they're very thoughtful, and maybe those are the folks who have lives that are more like a financial chart, but in my it's more like the branches. So I have folks from different branches who have been really, really instrumental in helping to guide me, and helping to course correct, and helping to check things.
Yeah.
It is super important, super important. And actually, I would say about mentorship, some of the folks who have been most useful are not the people who are closest to me.
Right. Yeah.
And I actually saw that, I saw this was a post from Coco Brown, who runs the Athena Alliance. It's a networking and kind of executive women's program. She's terrific. And she said, when you're thinking about cultivating your mentors, think about folks who are not your close connections.
Right.
Because probably your close connections, they already know you. They know you. They're going to tell you the same 5 or 10 things that they've told you the last 5 or 10 times you ask them, and those things will be helpful. But it's those maybe tangential connections in your network who can give you the breakthrough idea, the breakthrough or a new connection that you haven't thought about, or a new angle on this problem that you haven't thought about. And I thought it was such terrific advice. I've really been thinking about that a lot lately. Who are not the first level people that are my go-to mentors, but a couple connections removed that might help with the breakthrough ideas.
Well, was Intel the first technology industry company that you went into, or how did the interest in technology itself form?
Intel was the first, and I came out of MBA. I have an MBA in marketing and strategy from Kellogg, and I was interviewing for Intel, and the question was about, they were asking me all these technical questions, and I just said, I'm not an engineer. I'm a marketing person. I'm a strategy person. I'm not afraid to ask questions, and I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty and learn. So if you need that kind of an approach, and I was lucky at that point in time, because I think Intel was very open to that sort of an approach. And if you think about it, if you have a lot of technical folks, they don't necessarily, they all understand it. So sometimes it takes another voice to come in and say, well, what about this? Or who's going to use this? Or how do I explain this to someone?
Relating it to the customer and the voice.
Relate this to a customer problem.
Right.
And that was kind of my angle in.
Yeah.
And that turned out to be really, really super valuable. And I got a great piece of advice along the way, which was that my manager at the time said, look, you don't have to know the answers.
Yeah.
You just have to know the questions.
I love that.
And what a gift. I mean, what a gift,
Yeah. Do you still see that being relevant today? We don't, in my experience and what I'm seeing, we're not spending enough developing younger talent to be able to grow into these positions. So, I mean, what do you see, and what do you feel like we really need to do to help pay attention to mentor the young professionals into more senior roles? This talent gap is going to get bigger.
I love that question, and I agree with you. I think it's really important. I was very fortunate to grow up at Intel at a time when they were investing deeply in management training and development training. And I was able to carry that with me to smaller companies. When I went out and I was in a startup environment, I was able to bring all that great training and to add on to that with other good tools that are out there to help develop people. So I think maybe 2 threads. One is, even small companies, you have to invest in management training and development. You absolutely have to invest in it. We don't expect engineers to just show up and learn how to code on the job. We should not expect managers to just show up and know how to be good people managers on the job. You have to invest in that training and development. There are lots of tools and ways that you can go about that. The other thing is that I think as people leaders, it's really important to not always be the smartest person in the room.
I believe that too. I agree.
Right? It's really important to cultivate in yourself the ability to just ask questions, to give the other voices at the table a chance to speak up, to invite them to contribute, to deliberately not rush to the answer, to the judgment, or to the decision. And when you fill up the room and you're always the smartest person in it, your team is going to sit back. They're just going to wait. You're not going to get good answers, and they won't be developed as leaders also.
And I just to add to that, because I was just asked last week, and it's a very, very bright individual. She's on a board of directors, but feels like she's not heard. And, and is always sitting back, as you say, wanting to contribute, but can't seem to get the voice out there. And,
Yeah.
I don't know how you think about this advice, but I said, well, the next time, stand up. Just stand up out of your chair and say, let me share something, and just do it, not in a harsh way, but until we train to allow, and it's also a signal to her as someone who is a little more quiet. It's a signal that it builds that confidence. I'm going to stand up and I'm going to share. So maybe there's some attention that sort of breaks in the room.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
think-
What other strategies might you use?
Man, I think that's a great idea. I love that. I'm going to steal that idea. That's a great idea.
Good.
I think that's a great idea. I am a direct communicator, and I grew up in a house where there was a lot of dinner table, banter and jumping in and debating of things. So when I got to Intel and you had to speak up and you had to jump into the conversation, I was very comfortable with that.
Sure.
But there are many people who do not have that communication style, and it's much harder for them to contribute. So I think that puts a responsibility on managers and on leaders to understand your people and make sure that you are creating opportunities where it's safe and encouraged for them to contribute.
I so agree.
That's the role of it. That is a role of a manager. And if you are one of those people who needs that, I think first, that's totally fine. And one of the things I've learned is that, it may be my style to try to push for a decision in a meeting, but I have to respect that the other voices around the table don't all work that way. So if that means that I have to say, okay, I'm going to put this out there, we're going to think about it, we're going to come back and make the decision at this point in time, that gives other people with different styles another way to contribute. Maybe they feel more comfortable contributing offline. Maybe I would seek them out in a one-on-one and say, hey, I didn't hear you in the meeting. What do you think? Sometimes I'll invite people to participate. If you're that person, I think trying to find the places where you feel safe talking to a peer or talking to your manager and saying, how best can I contribute? How can you help me make space in the meeting? I love this standing up and saying something. Sometimes that's just not possible, but sometimes your peers, if they know your style, they can help you. They can interrupt the conversation and give you a space. Or your manager, if they know that's their style, they can interrupt the conversation and give you the opportunity to.
Which is, what we're kind of bringing up is it should be an active consciousness, so that we don't go back into our habits and create status quo meetings. So it's really an action oriented, got to think about it, got to put it forward in our consciousness to really focus on this, both sides, not just not just the leaders, but those that have that quiet voice. I love your feedback that you have to find your safe space to be able to get your voice heard out there. So I have another question for you. Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you.
No, that's fine.
Well, because you talk about decision making, and I get this, and I think we've all been involved in this. You're in the room and you think the decision was made, and then you leave the conference room, and 2 days later, they're still talking about the decision that was made but wasn't made, and now it's back up on the table. Have you experienced that? And
yep, 100%.
So how do you? What is your sort of strategies for working around that, or how do you deal with it? I get a lot of young talent, not just young, that people get frustrated with it so easily, but it's something that you have to contend with.
I agree, and I agree, and I think the kind of Zoom culture of the last couple of years has actually made it a little even more prevalent. So two things, very tactical. One is starting the meeting with, what are the decisions we're going to make today?
Yeah.
Just say up front, the objective of this meeting is whatever it is. Here's the decision we're going to make. Here is how we're going to make the decision.
Yeah.
So that everyone in the room hears that.
Yeah.
You close the meeting, you do the same thing. this was the decision that we made. Here's what it is.
Yeah.
Everybody hears it. They have a chance to say, whatever it is, or hold your peace.
Yeah.
And then you have to write it down.
And
absolutely. I know you have to write it down, and not just like send somebody a Slack. You have to actually write it down somewhere where people who were and were not in the meeting can go back and see that that's the decision that we made. And I think that last part, it sounds so tedious, but actually that's creating transparency in your organization and your team. And I think that's really important. And I know in smaller companies and in startups, everybody's moving so fast. It seems bureaucratic. It seems like process heavy. We're all here. We're just going after the goal.
Right.
But if you don't stop and write it down, then when you come back to 2 weeks later and we're still talking about the same thing, you don't have anything to go back to.
Right.
Exactly. But if you have that, you can say, hey, wait a minute. Like we wrote this down. We made this decision.
Right.
Why are we reopening the decision?
Yeah.
It helps with transparency, I think, and accountability.
And so I guess I have two-pronged question here. One, the roles that you've had have been fairly significant, and I can imagine, having experienced this some myself, is that they could be quite stressful at times. So maybe share, and especially in, looking at the mental health issues and anxiety that we're all going through with uncertainty, what strategies did you use to try to help, if there's any such thing as bringing some kind of balance to your life, but to try to manage that stress level a little bit in these very senior and stressful roles at times?
I've gotten better at that as I've gotten older.
Yeah. I think we all do. Yeah.
I will also say that when you're the leader of the team, easier. People think that is harder.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
But I, in my own experience, that has made it easier because you have more control over your time and over the tone and the culture that you want to establish.
I believe if you're a good leader of your team, that's probably very true. So you're also probably good at delegating to that team and have a good trust with that team.
And nothing happens without trust. You have to have the trust.
Yeah.
But also, if I want to set a tone that, here's a great example. I'm a night owl. So I might be up and working at midnight. But I have absolutely no expectation that anyone on my team is going to be responding or is going to be looking at it or is going to be involved. And I have, tried to be real clear with folks and say, look, this is who I am and these are productive hours for me, but I don't have that expectation of you. At the same time, if you want me on a video call at 6 a.m., that's probably not going to happen. So we've tried to be, in the teams that I've had, I've tried to be transparent about norms. Like, we want you to be online and visible and on your camera and engaged between, these kind of hours.
Right.
And if you're working outside those windows, that's great, but don't have the expectation that everyone else is going to match your working hours or your level of, that. And I think then there are all the other things. Like I have a very healthy yoga practice. I have I do a lot of hiking. I do a lot of cycling. I see my kids, and you have to have those other things going on in your life. I do a lot of volunteer work in the community and causes that are important to me. I'm a big believer in all girls education. So I serve on the board of an all girls high school.
Yeah. Nice.
And those things can bring, balance and perspective too.
Absolutely. I did. It's interesting to bring up kids because I have a daughter worked and was part of a pre-I and post IPO, big
that's great.
Venture, also a venture backed company. But, growing, I love to mentor, and I was doing a mentorship of some Duke University MBA students. It was a women's organization at Duke University. And they were fearful of trying to have a family and trying to find career. And I had very, very good support. I mean, my husband and I had really good balance with that. I can't say I was always balanced, but we bounced off of each other and made it work. But I think it's a question that I still get is, having children in this day and time with the stresses of work, and I mean, do you have any young, tips for young women thinking about this very hard?
I think this is going to sound harsh, but I will say it anyway.
Yeah, no.
You have to figure out how to balance your work and your life in a way that feels good to you.
Yeah.
And if you're struggling to do that without kids, kids won't make it any different.
Yeah.
And if you are able to find a good balance, and you figure out, whatever that karma is for you, or whatever that balance is for work and life, then you will figure that out with kids too.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I think that I was really fortunate when I had my kids that I was able to take significant time off. I think I took 6 months with my daughter and 5 months with my son, and that was fantastic. And I was also at a level of management where I could say, I'm only working 4 days a week.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And that gave me more time to spend with my son when he was little.
So you weren't afraid of taking that little bit of time cut?
I took the time cut, and I don't think that it impacted my career trajectory.
Yeah.
And I would also say that right now, the market is so great for people that you have more control over that than you may feel that you have, to say, this is what's important to me. I'm going to work 4 days a week.
I agree. I totally agree.
Or to be with my family. And believe me, they'll get more out of you in 4 days where you're focused on it than 5 days when you're running around feeling crazy because you don't have your life imbalanced.
Well, so that brings up kind of the remote work, no remote work, hybrid work. Do you have any sway or feel that, it's got to be all in, or, remote's fine, or any experiences you've had there?
A lot of experience. I don't think we know the answer to it. I
agree.
think really we can say with confidence that it won't be how it was before the pandemic.
Right.
Too many assumptions that we had have just been shattered, have just been proven to be not true.
Right.
At the same time, having everybody fully remote on Zoom all the time is also not good for all kinds of different reasons.
Yeah.
But I don't think we know what the new model is going to look like. I think that's something that we're discovering. And I think that we will see a lot of innovation and a lot of companies spring up to help us find new ways of working and new ways that are more effective, that give us more flexibility and control over our time. I feel like that's maybe a silver lining of the pandemic. Yeah. It's really caused,
it broke everything.
It's broken up some myths about how work had to be.
So looking into your future ball, your magic crystal ball, what's the most exciting thing in technology you think is going to happen over 2023, 2024?
Oh, wow. I can tell you the areas that I am most interested in right now.
Yeah.
All of my experience has really been in B2B and in looking at more how technology can transform the way we work.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where my lens is, looking. And the areas that I'm most interested in right now remain robotics, either robotics for warehouse automation, robotics and tech in general in agriculture. And I pick those two because I think those are two industry sectors that are hugely important to our economy, that are really disrupted and impacted by the labor shortage, and in agriculture also by climate change, and where technology has such potential to do good. And the technology is going to be about automation. It's going to be about how do we do more with less resources, less people, less chemicals, maybe. How do we make our supply chain more resilient and less resource intensive? How do we make agriculture more resilient and less resource intensive. And I think in both of those cases, robotics and automation and software are going to play a huge role in that. So those are the two spaces that I'm most interested in and that I'm looking at. I'm sure that other people, everybody, technologists have different lenses. My lens is shaped by the spaces that I've been in the last few years that I think are really exciting.
I will add one. I love the skeletal robotics for aging or
yes,
disabled, and watching Japan in the early days of what they were able to do and putting senior citizens to work in hospitals, lifting bodies, for moving them from one bed to another, and able to do that using. I think that's really positive, and there are innovation things for good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what do you tell young people as you look into 2023 with so much uncertainty and a lot of young anxiety and mental health, and again, I stress not yet just young, but there is a lot of we already know mental health issues. We know that 85%, if not more, people are not happy in their jobs from the stats that I keep seeing. What do you tell people to think about for 2023, if there's anything?
This is the same advice I'm giving myself. So I'm done.
Yeah.
I'll give it out in general. I think we should not be so hung up about finding your one true passion and thinking that you're going to find the one thing that you were meant to do, and that's going to unlock.
I love that. Absolutely. Yeah.
That, I talked about my life being more like branches in a tree. I've followed many different branches. I've had many different passions and different teams that I've worked with and different technologies. And I think that's true for a lot of people. You can just try it.
Right. Right.
If you're thinking that you might be interested in something, if you're thinking that this path might be an area you want to explore, don't get so hung up that I have to find my one true thing, like the tablets are going to come down from the mountain or something. I mean, maybe that happens and that would be amazing if it does. Like, that would be great. But I think most of us don't, we're pulled in different directions to explore, and that's good. That's good.
I agree. I think we get mixed messages sometimes for people wanting you to focus. And then at the same time, which is hard, because if you focus, then all you get is, you're excellent at social media strategy, but you didn't really expand your business savvy in that world.
And maybe that's great, because maybe that really is your one true thing. But I come back to three questions when I think about it. One is, does the work matter?
Yeah.
When I get up in the morning, do I feel that this work matters?
Right.
Is it making a difference in a way that is meaningful to me? What can I learn? What can I learn? What can I learn from the business? What can I learn from the job that I'm doing? What can I learn from the people that I'm with? And then who are the team? Because a great team will make the work meaningful.
Yes. Yeah.
And with a great team, you can succeed and do all kinds of things that you couldn't do before, or you couldn't do alone. And some of these questions, like, how do I find balance? How do I find collaboration? How do I feel that I'm having impact? They just get easier and, frankly, a lot more fun if you're working with a team. So I would say, if you're thinking about your job and you're answering those questions and they aren't the answers that you want, then go back to my first one, which is, you can't win if you don't enter.
Yes.
And go try something different.
Something else. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Was there anything I haven't asked you and you want to make sure that we talk about?
This has been a fantastic conversation. It makes me feel very excited and hopeful. So I think that's great. I think in this season, anything that makes us feel excited and hopeful and reflect maybe on the journey ahead and the path behind and the opportunities is a fantastic thing.
Well, this is one of my passions, to see if I can't help people feel hopeful and more upbeat in the sort of world that we're getting, terrible news almost every day. It's in our faces. So there are wonderful things happening. And I think you bring it up. It's like there's so many good things happening in technology that will be good. There are changes that are happening in agriculture. I was in RTP, which Research Triangle Park this week, and I was in some
Oh,
of the major agricultural centers seeing amazing innovations. And so I think there's wonderful things going on. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate you saying it. But I do want to bring up, the 3 takeaways that I got from you are you can't win if you don't enter. And I love that. And you don't need all the answers, just ask the questions. And a great team makes the work meaningful, which is so important. But if you're not finding that great team, there are so many other things to go do. Go find it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And have the confidence of your convictions and
Yeah.
go out there.
Yeah, awesome. Well, anything else you want to add before we close? And I'll say thank you so much for being with us today.
I'm good. Thank you so much. It was really fun talking with you.
Yeah, same here. I'm going to stop our video.